Hey everybody, welcome back to Equity Guru. Today I'm with Mike Stier, who is in charge of Saga Metals. You won't find that on Stockwatch just yet because Saga is doing an IPO and will be on the exchange. I would imagine within a week or two of when this video goes out. Um, but why we're interested in Saga and talking about them before they're out there in investor world proper is Mike, you last time we talked, we mentioned that there was a couple of big fish around you, and one of them has taken a big bite. Would you like to tell the people about Rio Tinto?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Chris, for having me back on. Yeah, Rio Tinto, they have come to the table in a big way. Last time we spoke, we were definitely close to securing a deal with them, but now I can officially announce that I believe we issued the news on July 3rd, so anyone can kind of go check out that news release for the specific details. But they have executed a two-stage earn-in option agreement, whereby if they spend upwards of $44 million on the property over those two earn-in stages, they can earn up to 75% interest in our property. That also includes some cash payments directly to the company, which the first tranche will come in 45 days from executing that agreement. So it's great in that perspective. They have to commit about 1.7 million dollars Canadian in the initial 20 months. So kind of think of it as two field seasons. And then that cash coming into our treasury allows us to put that towards some of our other projects, which is fantastic.
Which I really appreciate the jujitsu involved in this deal, in that you've managed to get two projects moving and bring in one of the biggest partners you could possibly bring in
Yeah,
without having to lay out any of your own cash.
absolutely. And you know, I think that right now, in the market in general, you know, especially you talk to any bankers or things like that, like people aren't overly enthusiastic over lithium right now in general. I mean, obviously it's no surprise. The price of lithium hydroxide or lithium carbonate's come down quite a bit from even 12 months ago. But a company like Rio Tinto, like they're making waves in the lithium space. They're obviously wanting to be a big player in the industry, and so they're not concerned about these short-term blips in pricing. They're looking at more of the medium to long-term perspective of lithium and just the future of the whole green energy transition. And so for us, it's fantastic because even though the price of lithium has come down, the understanding of the magnitude of lithium that's being uncovered in the James Bay region has only increased in the last 12 months substantially across all of these projects. And specifically in our eastern part of James Bay. And if you go to our website or look at our corporate presentation, you can see the regional map of all the players that are kind of in a contiguous strike in the prospective geology for lithium in that area. And just that, again, the understanding of what's going on is only increased. And so it's kind of given us the ability to be passive on the lithium side, let Rio Tinto take that on. It's a company that never has to do a financing. Like if we were to say do a deal with a smaller company that may have to go out and raise money to do their exploration programs, with lithium being depressed right now, just in the capital market region, that might be a little bit tougher to do, right? So then that puts into jeopardy their ability to do the programs and actually find something on our ground.
Sure.
We don't have that concern with Rio Tinto. We know that they have the money; they're going to be able to do it. And if they find something, great, we can build some great shareholder value through that, regardless of lithium pricing. Because if they find something, they find something. It's not
Yeah.
it's not a matter of raising money or not. So, and
And in the
again, that
meantime,
allows us to now focus on our other projects.
all you got to do is basically get out of the way and let them do their thing. But one of the things that's also interesting is that you're not getting out of the way, that you're legitimately working alongside them and establishing
Correct.
that contact that could be useful in any number of ways going forward.
100%. Like yes, this is a good point. We have a technical committee. So myself and Mike Garrigan, our chief geological officer, will have meetings on a regular basis with them to discuss, their thoughts and their due diligence that they've done on the property and the different programs that they want to put together. And of course, they're going to ask us for just the knowledge and information that we've garnered from the last 12 months and the work that we've done on the property. So yeah, very much a collaborative effort, and yeah, we'll be right alongside them to see what they're able to uncover, which is great.
So your chess moves after this deal were to acquire more property around the space,
Yes,
and to use some of that money to finance work on another property still of the four that you have in multi-metal opportunities. That's
correct.
a nice piece of parlaying what you've already had as a big win.
Yeah, so referencing the Amaro project, it is another lithium project. It's contiguous to our legacy project, kind of to the southern part, and then it wraps up and connects to Loyal Lithium's property, kind of in the center of the strike, with all the regional players in that area. And so it's about 31,000 hectares. Again, it's kind of our just our ability to capitalize on any kind of movement in lithium in the future, right? And so we feel that it's a smart move for the company, for our shareholders, for creating value. If Rio Tinto is able to find anything on that, it's another piece of the puzzle to be able to capture more value in James Bay, and we think there's a lot of value to capture there. So we're extremely excited about that project. It's again on the very similar prospective ground, which is the Paradise. It's a transitionary metasedimentary rock that comes from the greenstone, which people may be more familiar with. That's where Adina has found their 78 million ton resource, and so we're just downstrike from that.
So a lot of people sort of look at lithium right now in Canada and sort of roll their eyes, but what's always interesting to me is as soon as the lithium price goes up, everyone suddenly gets reinterested. But nobody's going to be producing anything for 4, 5, 6 years. So the price right now, it almost doesn't matter. It's are we going to be using more lithium in the future? Pretty sure we are.
Correct. No, I completely agree with you. And that's exactly why our deal with Rio Tinto was not it was not based on or predicated on the price of lithium. The price of lithium actually never came up in conversations a single time throughout the whole process because, to your point, it doesn't matter. It's about the prospective nature of the ground. Rio Tinto, obviously, as you can imagine, is a company that's going to do their due diligence, and if they're saying that they want to go and see if there is anything there, they obviously think the data is pointing in that direction, and we'll
Mhm.
see what it is that they're able to uncover. So
It's interesting to me that the Australian retail investor market is very much for lithium right now. There's a lot of properties that are doing great numbers. It's just this Canadian thinking of, we all follow, I guess, one person at the front of the pack rather than charting our own course.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, Australia is definitely a great market for that. I mean, not even just for lithium, but uranium and critical minerals in general, right? They seem, as a country, have gotten on board with critical minerals and green energy transition and things like that. So it is a market that we hope to be able to tap into as we develop and grow our business and see if we can get support out of that region as well. So see how everything goes.
So, similarly interesting to me is, if we were to order your four properties in order of, what you would assume people would be interested in, the lithium property is good, but the uranium property is really what I guess has been the flagship. We're doing all this talking about the number two, but the number one is right there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, I think it's important to note because as a young company that's kind of coming out of the gate and developing, I think that the Rio Tinto deal just kind of adds that credibility that, hey, you know what, we did find a quality project, we did find quality ground, and a major company felt the same way, and so I think it just kind of shines a spotlight on Mike Garrigan's ability to find these projects and acquire them. The ones that we have and the ones that we may in the future. And so, yes, to your point, Delaware Uranium Project is our flagship project. We're now able to focus 100% on that primary project heading out of the IPO. The plan is to get out there and do an initial field program. It is a drill ready project from all intents and purposes. It's a ground that a company called Silver Spruce owned back from 2006 to 2008. They did a few million dollars worth of exploration on that project. And so we have tons of data, even data dating back into the 70s and 80s. So it's not like we're coming into this project cold. We've got a lot of information that's pointing to, well, a 14-kilometer verified trend of uranium, both in samples for uranium oxide, through CPS count, which is through your spectrometer, so your radiation level readings, and uranium count radiometrics, which is a geophysical survey that kind of just highlights, an area on the property where it could be prospective for uranium. And again, go to our website, go to our corporate presentation. You'll see that it shines right off the map, in a linear trend, running east west, right on that lower on the ridge line of our property. So Mike and the team are going to have a lot of work come this summer, and heading into a drill program that we hope to execute on in the fall, winter, depending on when the ground freezes. So,
Using some of that cash from Rio Tinto.
yes, correct.
Let's talk iron ore because that would be down the list of your properties a little bit, but I think it's a really interesting opportunity. Globally, iron is something that's a little bit in demand right now.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of the point of why it was added to the critical minerals list. We picked it up before it was added, but we had a pretty good inkling that it was going to be added to the list. So high purity iron was added as of, I believe, a month ago. It was in June at some point. And so, that's one of our secondary projects, same as the titanium vanadium project. But the interesting thing there is that it is kind of in the Labrador Trough on the western side. And so it's a piece of New Millennium's old ground that was part of their 43-101 resource estimation that they had done. So we have 8 drill holes from that resource estimate on our property that averages about 20 to 25% iron oxide. So very, very encouraging initial numbers, obviously, on that ground. They clearly identified a very linear trend. Like if you look at the drill holes, not only on our property, but the properties of LabMag and Abex Technologies that's above us, they just drilled in a straight line on a diagonal. And so there's lots more work to be done on that property. There's going to be a lot more areas to increase the width of that zone, and also the length, because it doesn't extend obviously to the kind of boundary limits of our property. So again, very encouraging, having those 8 drill holes. That's something that people always ask, with projects, and so that is a leg up there, and tons more holes to be drilled on that property for sure in the coming years. Again, it's a secondary project. It is one of merit that we think could add value for shareholders in the future. But it's going to be secondary, of course, to
For
our
sure.
property.
So, what I find really interesting about what you've gathered is how it all interconnects, right? Like it's not just random that you have an iron project, you have a vanadium project, and one of the uses, a titanium project, which obviously one of the uses for that is to increase the strength of steel.
Correct.
You've got uranium, you've got lithium, which both are plugged into the green energy side of things. You've
Correct.
got vanadium, which is also a piece of technology that grid-sized battery storage is very well applied to. All of
Yeah.
these pieces don't seem accidental, that they just all happen to dovetail from the same place to the same place.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. I mean, even vanadium, just being a stable metal, is also used in nuclear reactors. So yeah, tons of overlap, tons of synergy between the minerals. I think that's why, being branded a critical mineral company, that there is a lot of these intersecting elements downstream in the real world, makes a lot of sense. And at the end of the day, we kind of knew these were minerals that we wanted to go after. But the point wasn't to just go find random projects in random locations throughout the world. We've obviously picked 2 highly favorable jurisdictions, not only in Canada but globally. So our ability to move these projects forward, we're obviously extremely confident in. And then just the simple fact of, again, Mike and the entire team, in terms of running due diligence and being able to find these projects, it's about finding projects that are quality, that are of merit, that actually are sitting on the proper geological setting that would host these types of minerals. Now we still have to find them and do obviously all the exploration work and
Sure.
drill and come up with your resources and move through the natural course of exploration. But a lot of work is going into sussing out that these properties are actually properties of merit. And you're starting to see that already in the deals that we're making and the moves that, are forthcoming. So
I get a lot of companies that are, at your growth stage that have 4 or 5 properties. And generally, when you talk about anything more than the flagship, you get into oh yeah, well, that's non-core and it's just kind of going to sit in the background. I appreciate that some of these are secondary properties, but it's very clear that the motivation here is not to let them sit and fester, that you're
no,
actually doing the work on the ground, financing the work through non-traditional means, which is like, actually doing deals rather than just continually going out to financing.
for sure, and I think a good point to that too is the fact that even if you look at our prospectus, which was filed, it's dated July 11th. We announced it on July 15th. You'll note in there that the radar project, which is our titanium vanadium project, has an allocation of 172,500 under the line item claims maintenance. I think what people think is like, oh, that money's going to waste. It's just going to like secure the claims for another year.
Right.
And the misconception I want to make sure people understand is that yes, that money it will being spent will allow us to keep those claims for another year, but it's going into the ground. It's
Right.
going into work the whole point is to advance that project. It may be at a slower pace than our uranium one, but the point is to put it into the ground and come out with usable data that is continually de-risking and continually ticking the boxes on the project to move it forward with our understanding of just what's going on there geologically. And so 172,500, I can tell you, being that the property is about 10 kilometers south of Cartwright, the team stays in a motel within that town. They can drive right onto the property. Like a
Right.
road runs right to the highest mineralized zone on our property where the guys can literally park the truck, step out of the truck, walk into the bush, not even a kilometer, and start finding some of these minerals in pretty significant grades in terms of rock samples that we've obtained that are 6.63% titanium oxide and 3,670 ppm vanadium. It's those are solid numbers, right? And so the fact that you have quality infrastructure like that means that $172,000 goes very far, right?
Hmm.
Like as soon as you start eliminating the need for a helicopter on a daily basis or a
Right.
float plane to get access to your property, all of a sudden you can come out of a field program with 1,000 samples and $172,000, right? And so
Right.
I really wanted to highlight that because I think people think that when you say claims maintenance, it's just wasting money. It's
Right.
100% not wasting money, and
You're not
helping
hiring a
you.
security guard to make sure no one steals the fence posts.
Yeah, exactly. Like no, they're our team is quite literally out there garnering data to move that project forward, and so
Right.
it's all very exciting.
So now you're going through an IPO to get to a public listing, which isn't the thing that a lot of companies do on the Canadian junior markets. Why an IPO rather than an RTO?
Yeah, you know what? I think that just the structure that we've been able to build, keeping our cost of acquisition down for the majority of these projects, it just made sense to go the sort of clean, natural route of an IPO. And I think the bigger difference is that with an IPO, not only do you have to obviously deal with the exchange, you have to get your approval to list, and we're listing on the TSX Venture, but you have to go through the initial process with the BC Securities Commission. So that can take a little bit of extra time. Whereas with an RTO, you're dealing with a company that's already publicly listed, and you're looking for that entity essentially to acquire your entity. That's why it's a reverse takeover. You're backing in your company into the quote unquote listed vehicle is what it's commonly referred to. You don't have to deal with the commission at that point because it's a listed entity that's already dealt with the commission. So you deal directly with the exchange. That's not to say though that you don't have your time constraints and you have to go through a formal process, of course. But the IPO can take a little bit longer. However, I think if you look back in terms of when we filed our preliminary prospectus and when we were actually able to file our final, I think we did a pretty good job of keeping the timing quite tight. It just happens that now we're building the book in the summer. But I think it was a necessary step for us to do because it didn't make sense for us to back into that, as I mentioned, listed vehicle and sort of acquire additional shares or just the legacy of whatever may have occurred in that entity prior to it. Just we wanted to do a clean IPO and bring in new shareholders and set the company up for success.
So for people who've not taken part in a pre-listing IPO, like what is the process for the casual investor who might be interested?
Yeah, and so again, now that we filed the prospectus, we announced it on July 15th. We were receipted by the BCSC, which means they've cleared that final prospectus, which we announced on July 17th. The prospectus is now what's considered live, and so that means that Research Capital, who is our underwriter for the offering, can now set up the offering live in their broker system. And their broker system is nationwide within Research Capital. And then it also goes out to what's called a selling group to all of the other independent brokerage firms or major banks and things like that. And, you obviously have to inquire with whomever you have a brokerage account with to see if it's obviously available through that firm. Some of the bigger banks or some of the direct investing firms may have tougher access, but your typical Canacords and Ventum and things like Haywood Securities obviously, of course, have very easy access. And so what you quite simply do is you just call your broker and if obviously if you have questions, you can always talk to your broker about those questions with respect to the company or things like that. Of course, you can always call us at directly at the company or email us and ask those questions, and we can fill you in on anything to do with the company and what is that we're up to, or these specific questions about how to invest in our IPO. But nevertheless, if those questions are kind of all answered and you're ready to go, the simple process is you talk to your broker, you discuss how much you'd like to invest, and they reflect that interest to their back office. And then it's all handled electronically. Obviously, as an investor, you have the money in your account. When we close the IPO and we list the securities on the TSX Venture, the cash goes out to the back office to be settled with the company, and the shares go into your brokerage account. It's all free trading. There is no hold on these IPO shares. There's no subscription agreements. It's a very simplified electronic-based process.
So basically like a private placement financing without the hold and the
And
48
without
pages of
without
legalese.
all the paperwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I would suggest to people to really, whether or not you think you're going to invest in the company, to go have a look at the prospectus and learn a little bit about that process. I love the way that you've done this because you don't have all that baggage of the CPC or Shells or the previous companies that have gone belly up 6 times. No cheap paper. You're all in there at the same point. You can choose whether you want to buy into standard dollar units, flow through, charity flow through. It's all available. This is I appreciate that it's a lot more work probably for you, but at the end of the day, what you've got is a company that is fresh and clean, does exactly what it says on the tin, and doesn't have any dark surprises in 3 months and 29 days.
Yeah, correct. It's all outlined there right in the final prospectus. We do have a link to it on our website. We actually have an IPO page on our website that you can go physically click on and go see the final prospectus. Lower down on the bottom of that page, we actually have an FAQ, which does have some questions in terms of if you are interested in investing, how do I do that? What is a unit? Just different things related to the IPO that if you're just
Sure.
not totally sure. There are some answers there, but again, like I said, too, feel free to hit us up on the contact page and ask any questions that you have. We're here to answer those, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Just curiosity here. Do you find that the regulators and the exchange are more content for a company to go through the IPO process? Like, are they encouraging you to do so? Does it, benefit them in any way?
No, I mean, I definitely would say it doesn't benefit them in any way. There's no, there's really no, I guess, customer service element to the securities commissions or anything like that. Like they're there to do their due diligence and make sure that companies are doing what they say they're doing, and don't have any red flags within their organizational structure or things like that. Like all things to protect the investor. And so I think that that's where maybe you can be a little bit more confident that we've had to go through that grueling process to get approved by the BCSE. That they've done their due diligence, they've made us obviously answer all the questions and make any necessary tweaks to put forth the most true and plain disclosure with respect to our final prospectus that's out there. And so, but no, there's no like mandate across the country in terms of like, hey, we'd rather see more RTOs or more IPOs. I mean, companies are obviously able to and allowed to choose whichever path they want to
Sure.
do. There's just a framework within you have to operate, and we chose the IPO route because we felt it was the best route for us and the best route to create shareholder value and just build the company the way we wanted to do it, which we feel is the right way essentially.
I always think it's a great sign when a company decides to make extra effort and to show that they're clean, to show
Yeah.
that they are what they say they're going to do. It's a great sign, as is the fact that the regulators have done their due diligence on you, as is the fact that Rio Tinto has done the due diligence on you and decided that you're someone that they wanted to climb into bed with. I think all around what this points to is Saga Metals uh, setting itself up as being a real player and not one of the 2000 companies that, explore without actually doing any exploration.
No, for sure. And again, we are a company that's trying to do it right. I think both on the capital market side and on the exploration and geological side. Again, to the point that we've found projects that we think are of merit and quality. I mean, we've even spoken to some analysts that suggest that our projects would keep 3 or 4 different companies very busy. And so
Right.
yes, that means that our exploration programs on them may be over the course of a little bit longer period of time because we're not going to hit all of them as hard as you would say just a singular one. But nevertheless, they're all projects that we think could potentially add value to the company overall. And I think that level of diversification is important. I wouldn't want to just have one project where it's either boom or bust, right? Like this gives us some opportunities that, again, given our cost of acquisition and our ability to suss out and do the necessary due diligence to find these projects where we don't have to pay exorbitant amounts to acquire them has allowed us to bring in more projects, be more diversified without having a capital structure that's completely out of whack and not allowing us to be successful, right? So I think that's a major differentiating factor. And again, the simple fact that we have all these projects is that we have numerous catalysts that are going to occur over the next 6 to 12 months. Like we're going to have news flow, obviously coming out of Rio Tinto and what they're doing on our ground in James Bay, and we're going to have news coming out of secondary projects to the extent that we're doing work on those. But more importantly, obviously our double uranium project, which again, as I mentioned, we have a verified 14-kilometer trend, but in actual fact, it's a trend that's probably more upwards of about 18 kilometers, and it's open on either end. So verified right now with CPS count, as I mentioned, the radiation levels at surface. You got your rock samples. That's verified over 14 kilometers. But it's really a trend that is quite extensive. And to give you maybe some perspective, there's a company just north of us, Paladin Energy. They own a company called Aurora Energy. They have 127.8 million pounds of uranium oxide at 860 ppm within a 3 kilometer zone on their property. And so if you can imagine, now that obviously doesn't indicate what we're going to find in ours, but I'm just trying to put into perspective that we
Sure.
do have a prospective trend that is 14 plus kilometers. So if you can find that in 3 kilometers, we're obviously hopeful as to what it is that we may be able to find in ours. And
It definitely shows that Patterson Lake's not the only place in Canada with a healthy amount of uranium in the backyard.
No, for sure, and Labrador is very much a large tonnage, low grade play, and so again, to that point, I think it's another great advantage for us is that we don't have to go out and drill this and try to high grade a specific zone to say, oh, we've got X percentage in uranium oxide. Look at us, like that. That's not the point. Like the point
Mhm.
is to go out and try to drill across this entire trend. So even our initial program, which we'd love to get into, is about 4,500 meters. That's 32 holes across an 8 kilometer zone of the 14 kilometers that we've identified. That area is going to help you start to understand what level of tonnage you're possibly dealing with. We don't have to do exploratory drilling. We know where the trend is, right?
Right.
So again, just in terms of Catalyst, very exciting what we have forthcoming. Lots of activity, lots of work to be done on all these projects. And yeah, I'm super excited. I know Mike Garrigan, who's out in the field right now, is super excited. He's built an amazing team this year. Everyone's working well together, and it's already going well in terms of their observations on the ground. And we're looking forward to getting some news out here in the coming weeks on it. So
Fantastic, man. Well, look, I love it when a plan comes together, and it looks like this plan is genuinely coming together all at the right time. Congratulations to what you've done so far, and
thanks,
looking
Chris.
forward to seeing how it debuts in a
Absolutely.
couple of weeks. Is there a ticker symbol reserved at all, or
Yeah, absolutely. Our ticker symbol is going to be Saga, which is
easy
awesome.
peasy? Yeah,
When you go look it up on the TSX Venture, you're just going to see SAGA, Saga. Pretty easy to remember. It's the name of our company, so we're definitely fortunate to be able to get that.
excellent. Well, everybody, go take a look at the Saga Metals website. Go find their prospectus. Look at the corporate presentation. If nothing else, you'll learn something about a multitude of metals and opportunities. I appreciate what you're doing, Mike, and let's talk again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
man.